So today we're going to talk about knitting 2 at a time socks, which is a great way of knowing when you can do your increases at the same time or decreases, and it's a much faster way of doing it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you yarn. The red yarn is going to be sock A and the blue yarn is going to be sock B. So we're going to cast on with the red yarn and put half of our stitches and slide them along up here. Then we're going to cast on all of our stitches for the blue yarn, and that's we're going to slide that along to there and then half them. Then we're going to cast on the rest of the red stitches for sock A on to here. So personally I like to use a pair of nice sharp pointy needles, and I prefer no joins, and something about an 80cm cable should be enough space to fit both your socks on without too much cable twisting up. These are actually Addy needles. So just cast on using your usual cast on method. I'm using long tail, and you want to cast on half the stitches for the first sock, sock A. So that's 15 in our case. I'm using a DK yarn here, as I found a new love of knitting DK socks. They're very fast and very squishy and warm. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15. When you've cast on half your stitches, you want to slide them along to the other side of the needle, and then you want to take your second yarn, which will probably, if you're knitting a pair of similar socks, will be the same colour as the first, and cast on all of your stitches for that sock. So that would be 30. It's a little bit fiddly, but very much worth it when you've got 2 socks finished and you don't have that second sock syndrome to deal with. So casting on 30 stitches for the second sock. Check those. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 2, 4, 6, 8, 30. And at this stage you've got your stitches at that end for your first sock, and you want to divide these stitches in 2 using the cable. So count your 15, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15, and pull out the cable. As I say, it's a little bit fiddly, but well worth it. Okay, so now you want to add on your 15 stitches to complete the cast on for the first sock, and this is where it does get really fiddly, but you just want to do your usual cast on here, get rid of that tail, put that there, and you want to try and make it as tight as possible to make sure there's no gap. So you want your 15 stitches. And there you have stitches for your first sock and stitches for your second sock. And the important thing here is to not let them get twisted into Mobius loop. So you have to make sure they're all straight when you start knitting. And then it's just basically a matter of knitting round in a circle. So knit these stitches, then you use this yarn to knit these stitches, and then you turn the work and knit along there, and then knit along there. So you've got to join these in a circle first of all. I've got a bit too much of a tail, probably break that off. And so here we go with the ribbing. And you don't want to knit with the tail, that wouldn't be good. Okay. Hang on, where is it? Sometimes you bring that through the loop, it helps, because you want to make sure it's not twisted. Okay, so we're going to do just a basic rib. Knit one, purl one, and I've just noticed how dirty my nails look from dyeing yesterday. Okay, so we've got to the end of the first half of sock A, and we want to move along to sock B very carefully, not wanting to twist it. So let's move these stitches along to the end. Yeah, we need to bring that this way and make sure they're not twisted. Okay. And again, we'll get rid of that long tail, we don't want that. Okay, so the yarn is at the back and you want to join it in the round, so just want to do that simple rib again. So we have now finished the rib for sock A and sock B. We need to turn the whole work round. So we might need to bring this blue up through the loop. There we are. And just carry on knitting. You've just got to check what stitch was your last stitch, which would be knit. So you want to start with a purl. I did knit a pair recently with a 60cm cable, and although these cables seem quite long, 60cm was just a little bit too short and tight, so I think the 80cm cable is a little bit better. Now you can see there's a bit of a gap there, but then on the next round, if you just pull your first and second stitches a bit tighter, that will close up. And then we want to do the last half of sock A. So if we just pull that cable through again, and we ended on a knit, so we want to purl. I think this method works well when you're doing kind of plain items like with a basic slip stitch or just stocking stitch or a bit of ribbing. I think it gets a bit more complicated when you get more complicated patterns, because it's not always possible to do an increase or decrease across this gap. But it's also a method you could use it for mittens or sleeves if you had a longer cable. So again, we've got this slight gap here, but that will close up on the next round if you pull the stitches nice and tight. And that is how you cast on for 2 at a time socks. Before you start your next round, just move the stitches up so that they're onto the needles, and then you want to make sure you half these in the same place as the last time. So that was at 15 stitches, so 2, 4, 6, 8, 12. Do it again, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15, and pull the cable through. And this is the most fiddly bit. Once you've got a length of knitting on your needles, it sits a lot more easily, and you can just knit away, and it should be a lot quicker and you don't get second sock syndrome. Then we're going to cast on the rest of the red stitches for sock A on to here. Right, so let's make a start.